Welcome to Trending Unpacked, the podcast where we explore what the world is talking about one trend at a time. Today, we're getting into a group whose impact is just... well, it's hard to overstate. Their name is basically synonymous with K-pop going global. We are, of course, talking about the legendary South Korean group BIGBANG.
Absolutely. And, it's not really an exaggeration when people throw around the title Kings of K-pop. Often they mean Big Bang specifically. Their influence, their shadow, it just stretches across the whole industry. For like over a decade, they were shaping aesthetics, sound, even global strategy.
Totally. And what's fascinating, and why we're talking about them now, is that even though their group activity has, ebbed and flowed in recent years, they keep trending. They're this constant reference point, historically, culturally. So our mission today, looking at the material you've shared, is to unpack that. Let's explore the history, the different ways people interpret them culturally, and that enduring influence that keeps them so central to the K-pop conversation. We really want to pull out the key takeaways for you, the listener, so you can grasp the sheer scale of their legacy.
Sounds good. And, to really understand that legacy, that empire they built, we kind of have to start at the beginning. We need to look at how they were formed and the, honestly, radical musical identity they carved out right from the start. Let's go back to 2006.
Okay, so 2006, YG Entertainment, that's the label, that's the year Big Bang forms. And looking back now, that moment feels really pivotal, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely pivotal. 2006. It was a really interesting time in K-pop. This is the second generation kicking into high gear. And while, there were seeds of international interest being sown, the industry itself was still pretty rigid in many ways.
Rigid how? Like, what defined that era?
Well, there was a heavy emphasis on certain idol aesthetics, Super synchronized choreography was huge. Uniform styling across the group members. And the sound was often, leaning toward lighter, sometimes bubblegum pop, very polished, very controlled.
Okay.
So YG Entertainment, they took a pretty significant risk, actually. They decided to go in a direction that consciously, deliberately, avoided a lot of those constraints.
And that direction centered around these five guys who became the face of the group for so long. We're talking G-Dragon, T.O.P., Taeyang, Daesung, and Seungri.
That's the lineup.
And what we're getting from the source material is that this specific lineup, debuting into that specific K-pop environment, it just set the stage perfectly for the kind of rebellious sound they brought.
Exactly. The difference was felt almost immediately. They didn't debut with that typical, cute concept or the perfectly synchronized image everyone expected.
Sure.
Right from the jump, they were positioned with this more aggressive, hip-hop-influenced edge. There was this implication, even early on, of creative input from the members themselves.
Which was unusual then.
Very unusual for an idol group at that time, yeah.
Now, we do need to touch on a significant historical point here because it did impact their path forward. While that five-member structure held for many, many years, Seungri officially retired from the entertainment industry and left the group in 2019. This followed a major public controversy.
Right. And that event, which, we have to mention factually, impartially, it was a huge test, a profound test for the group's resilience, and honestly for the fandom's resilience, too.
Yeah.
In K-pop, a scandal of that scale, that high profile, it can often mean the end, a complete stop, or, the legacy just gets tarnished beyond repair.
But with Big Bang.
But with Big Bang, it was different. After the initial shock, it seemed like the focus eventually somehow shifted back to their foundational work, their iconic music and performances. It almost underscored just how deep the roots of their artistry went. It could withstand that kind of storm.
It's definitely a crucial part of their story, and understanding the current status requires acknowledging it. But to really get why they had that power, that resilience, we absolutely have to talk about the music itself. The sound that let them weather those storms. Hashtag 1.2, the sound that defined an era. Because the moment they hit the scene, Big Bang wasn't just playing the K-pop game. They were, rewriting the rules, weren't they? The sources we looked at consistently point to this defining trait. This fearless, almost audacious blend of authentic hip-hop with more traditional K-pop structures, the melodies.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is the kind of hip-hop they were pulling from. It wasn't just, throwing in a token rap verse like some other groups might have done.
Okay.
G-Dragon and T.O.P. especially, along with their production team.
Yeah.
They really embraced sounds that were heavily influenced by, American Southern trap music, even older G-funk vibes. And then they'd smash these hard synthetic beats and these really quite aggressive rap flows right up against the super polished R&B style vocals from Taeyang and Daesung.
Wow, so it wasn't just a gentle mix. It was more like a collision, a deliberate contrast.
Exactly. A collision is a great way to put it. You had styles that in the K-pop world at least, had mostly been kept pretty separate before them.
Had other groups tried mixing genres like that?
Well, sure, earlier K-pop acts had definitely flirted with R&B, maybe some later hip-hop elements, but Big Bang,
Yeah.
they injected this raw, almost streetwise energy. The lyrical content, the attitude, it just felt far more authentic, less manufactured than what people were used to hearing from quote-unquote idol groups.
Right.
And that stylistic break, that deviation, it immediately set them apart. It gave them this credibility, especially with international music listeners and critics who could recognize and appreciate that level of genre sophistication.
And that innovation, that technical skill in blending those sounds, moving beyond the synchronized pop into something grittier, more complex, that was key, wasn't it? Because it traveled well.
That's absolutely the crucial point for understanding their global expansion. That sound translated across cultures, across languages, much more easily than maybe some earlier K-pop had.
Why do you think that is?
Well, think about hip-hop. As a genre, it functions almost like a global cultural language, right?
Yeah.
It has reach everywhere. So, by rooting their sound so firmly in this global genre, while still keeping those really high K-pop production values and those super kitschy, hook-heavy choruses, Big Bang essentially built a bridge.
Ah, okay. A bridge for Western listeners, maybe?
Exactly. They started breaking down those initial sonic barriers. They showed audiences, particularly in the West, that Korean idol music wasn't just some niche bubblegum thing. It could be highly advanced, super fashion-forward, urban-influenced pop art.
Yeah.
You really laid indispensable groundwork for the genre's international acceptance just by making that sonic rebellion feel normal, feel cool. Hashtag tag 1.3 signature hits and artistry.
And when you look at their actual songs, their discography, wow. There are tracks that aren't just hits, they feel like global pop culture milestones. The sources kept bringing up specific ones. Fantastic Baby, obviously, Bang Bang Bang, Haru Haru, Loser. Each one kind of represents a different facet or evolution, right?
Totally. Take Fantastic Baby. Let's use that as a quick case study in just maximalism.
Okay.
It drops in 2012. K-pop is right on the verge of its first really big global wave, and the track itself is just an explosion. It's high-energy EDM smashed together with trap influences, and it's got that iconic chant-along chorus, wow, Fantastic Baby. And the music video, visually, it was chaotic, high-budget, conceptually completely out there.
Yeah, I remember that video. Wild.
It wasn't just a song release. It was a full-blown cultural moment. It instantly set this new global benchmark for visual spectacle in pop music.
But then you contrast that with something like Haru Haru.
Exactly. Haru Haru shows their other side, their versatility. It's this incredibly emotional ballad. It really showcased their depth, their ability to connect with the audience on a totally different level. It stands in such sharp contrast to the pure bombast of, say, Bang 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 later on. And that duality, that ability to do both the hype track and the heartfelt ballad convincingly, that's a huge part of their enduring artistry.
That word artistry comes up a lot in the sources when talking about them. It wasn't just about the hits.
Precisely. The sources really emphasize that their legacy isn't solely built on chart positions. It's about this broader concept of artistry and how they uniquely disrupted the existing idol culture.
What was so disruptive about it? What did idol culture look like before them, mostly?
Traditionally, the idol system often demanded, or at least strongly encouraged, uniformity, obedience maybe, strict adherence to a carefully crafted, pre-approved image.
Right, very managed.
Very managed. Big Bang seemed to systematically pick that apart.
So what made their specific artistry stand out so much, especially back in the early 2010s when K-pop was getting really competitive?
I think a huge part of it was the perception, and often the reality, of self-direction and creative control. G-Dragon, particularly, was known for being heavily involved. Composition, writing lyrics, production. That gave the group a kind of legitimacy that very few idol acts really possessed back then.
So they felt less like performers reading a script and more like actual artists?
Exactly. They were presented less as manufactured products and more as genuine experimental artists who just happened to be using the K-pop platform as their canvas. And that creative involvement, that perceived authenticity, it gave them credibility that went way beyond the standard idol narrative.
How did that change things?
It allowed them to embrace concepts that were edgy, experimental, rooted in hip-hop culture, high fashion, sometimes even referencing high art. It fundamentally shifted the industry's perception of what an idol group could be. Their massive success proved you could maintain individuality, you could take real creative risks, and still achieve enormous commercial superstardom. They basically raised the bar. They normalized the idea that idols could and maybe even should be creators themselves. That set a powerful precedent for the generations that came after.
Okay, so we've got this picture of their monumental history, their groundbreaking sound. But the next question, the one that probably brings us to why you, the listener, might be hearing about them now, is why? Why does a group whose collective output has, slowed down in recent times, why do they stay so central to the conversation? Why do they keep trending online?
Yeah, that's the fascinating part, isn't it? And this is where we kind of shift gears from the historical foundation to looking at their contemporary relevance and, crucially, the dynamics of their fandom. The sources we looked at point to this really interesting, almost cyclical pattern. It seems their relevance gets sustained long after their peak group activity through basically 4 main digital triggers. It's almost like a blueprint for how to maintain a legacy in this era of super fast content cycles. Hashtag 2.1 sustained relevance in the digital age.
Okay, let's break those down. Trigger number 1, anniversaries. And the sources suggest this isn't just a passive, oh, remember this kind of thing.
Not at all. It's active. It's often highly organized.
Right. We see these global fandoms mobilizing online for big milestones, like the 10th anniversary of their iconic Alive album, or maybe the 5th anniversary of a monster hit like Bang, Bang, Bang.
And these aren't small moments. They drive huge engagement. You'll see massive coordinated social media campaigns, hashtags trending worldwide, fan-made celebratory content flooding platforms. It often pushes their old music videos right back into the trending categories on places like YouTube.
That coordination sounds key.
It's critical. When a legendary album or song hits a big anniversary, the digital world basically gets flooded with Big Bang content, retrospectives, analyses, fan edits. It effectively relaunches them into mainstream visibility, even just for a few days or weeks. Keeps the data churning, keeps the conversation fresh.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second trigger?
Solo speculation and actual solo activity. This is huge for them. Even when the group isn't active together, the individual members are still giants in the industry. Absolute titans.
Right, G-Dragon, Taeyang.
Exactly. So whether it's Taeyang making a highly anticipated solo comeback, which always generates massive buzz, or G-Dragon being G-Dragon, constantly involved in high fashion, whispers of new creative projects, his collaborations. Any significant activity around just one member instantly brings the group name, Big Bang, right back into the global conversation.
So the members' individual star power reflects back onto the group.
Precisely. It's a classic example of distributed influence. The brand, Big Bang, is just so immensely strong that the individual parts automatically lift the whole. If Taeyang releases a solo track, the headlines aren't just Taeyang releases music, they're often Big Bang's Taeyang returns. It immediately bridges his solo work back to the group's massive legacy. And guess what? That drives streams for the entire Big Bang back catalog, too.
Clever. Okay, third factor.
This one's crucial for any legacy act. Their influence on the new generations of artists.
Ah, the ripple effect.
Exactly. When a brand new rookie group debuts and maybe openly references Big Bang's iconic early hip-hop style in their concept.
Or covers one of their songs.
Or covers a song, yeah. Or when a currently massive group, maybe a huge fourth-generation act, explicitly cites Big Bang as one of their primary inspirations in an interview.
Right.
It acts like this cultural time machine. It snaps the digital spotlight right back onto Big Bang.
And brings in new fans.
Totally. New K-pop fans, maybe listeners like you who are just getting into the scene and trying to understand the current landscape. They hear these references and they go searching. Who is this group they're talking about?
They look them up.
They look them up. It's organic discovery. And it means Big Bang's music is constantly being introduced to fresh ears, ensuring that people are still listening, still discussing, still consuming their work.
Okay, makes sense. And the fourth trigger?
This one feels very current.
Yeah.
The sheer power of nostalgia waves. And how they get amplified by modern social media platforms.
You mean like TikTok and...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Platforms like TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. They are constantly resurfacing and highlighting iconic little snippets. Moments from performances, memorable lines, catchy audio clips.
Ah, okay, like a soundbite going viral.
Precisely. Think about that short-form video world. Maybe a specific, 4-second clip from the Fantastic Baby music video becomes a popular reaction GIF,
Right.
Or the audio becomes a trending sound on TikTok.
Right.
Suddenly, you have millions of users, many of whom might have been literal babies when the song first came out, engaging with that specific piece of Big Bang content.
Wow.
It's not passive archiving in some dusty corner of the internet. It's active global reintroduction. It proves that real cultural impact can often be platform agnostic, jumping from context to context. Hashtag tag 2.2, the power of the VIP fandom.
Now, underpinning all of this, driving these trending moments even beyond algorithms, it's the fans, right? Their dedicated fan base, known as VIPs. The sources really highlight their loyalty as something almost unprecedented.
It really is a remarkable example of sustained emotional investment. You have to remember the K-pop industry, like much of the music industry, is defined by pretty high volatility. Rapid turnover of groups, trends changing constantly.
Yeah, it moves fast.
Super fast. So the loyalty of the VIPs, it acts almost like this cultural anchor for Big Bang. They've weathered lineup changes, long periods of group inactivity, really significant controversies, and yet the core community remains incredibly devoted.
They're not just listeners then.
No, they're far more than just passive consumers. They act almost like proactive custodians of the group's legacy, keepers of the flame, you could say.
And that proactivity is key, isn't it? The sources mention them actively organizing things.
Absolutely. They aren't just sitting back waiting for the next official release. They are frequently rallying online, organizing streaming parties for old hits, coordinating efforts to get anniversary hashtags trending globally, proactively sharing and circulating Big Bang's music, their iconic performances, their music videos across all platforms. They treat the back catalog like living history, ensuring the group stays visible even during those long stretches of official group silence.
That kind of organized, passionate fandom, it must translate into real power, right?
Yeah.
Culturally, maybe even economically.
Oh, absolutely. It translates into very real cultural and, yes, economic power. It constantly validates the group's foundational impact. And it serves as this powerful demonstration that fan communities, when they're truly deeply bonded by, strong artistic output and shared history, they become the real long-term drivers of pop culture history. They decide what lasts.
Yeah.
Hashtag Tech 2.3, broader cultural impact.
Okay, so we have the music, the digital trends, the fandom. But Big Bang's influence seems to have spilled out even beyond that into broader culture. The sources specifically mention fashion, streetwear.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Their style was arguably just as disruptive as their music was, maybe even more so initially.
Really? How so?
Well, think back again to that early mid-2000s K-pop scene. Idol styling was often very tight, highly coordinated, often featuring really bright matching colors. Uniformity was key.
Okay.
Big Bang, and let's be honest, driven heavily by G-Dragon's very unique fashion sense and vision. They ushered in this whole era of bold eccentricity, high fashion experimentation, real embrace of luxury streetwear labels mixing high and low.
So they didn't just wear cool clothes, they changed the look of an idol.
Exactly. They didn't just wear expensive stuff. They fundamentally redefined what a male K-pop idol could look like. They were mixing punk aesthetics with high fashion brands, underground hip-hop looks. Yeah. It was a mashup.
And that had a wider impact.
Huge impact.
Yeah.
It influenced not just the fashion norms within K-pop itself, making it suddenly acceptable, even desirable, for idols to look unconventional, highly individualistic. But it also set significant trends within Asian streetwear culture more broadly, globally. They became genuine style icons, almost independent of their music releases at times. Their airport arrivals were like runway shows.
Wow. Okay. Now we have to circle back to something critical that the sources raise again here, this idea of the controversy resilience paradox. The material acknowledges that the scandals involving members, particularly the events of 2019, were a severe test. Public image, the group's integrity, yet the phrasing is key. Despite these profound tests, their core artistry continues to dominate conversations.
Yeah, and that paradox really forces us, and you the listener, to think critically about that complex relationship between the art itself and the artist who creates it, especially in this modern, hyper-visible era. In Big Bang's specific case, it seems their artistic foundation, that musical innovation we talked about, their undeniable role as pioneers of globalization for K-pop, those visually stunning, groundbreaking music videos, it all achieved this kind of critical mass. Meaning the work itself, the music, the visuals, the impact. It became so integral, so fundamental to the history of K-pop that it appears the music and its associated legacy somehow became separated, or at least insulated to a degree from the individual actions or controversies surrounding the artist.
But is that universally agreed upon? Does the source material suggest everyone just separates the art from the artist in this case?
Well, the sources acknowledge the divide exists. It's not necessarily saying everyone should separate it, but observing that this separation happens in the discourse. While mainstream news might have focused heavily on the scandal, the scrutiny, the fallout, you see that within the dedicated VIP fandom, and also among critics and historians discussing K-pop's evolution, the conversation consistently pivots back to the seminal nature of their music, their influence.
So their pioneering status gives the work some protection.
It suggests that, the status they achieved as the creative pioneers, the ones who first broke that specific mold in K-pop, it seems to grant the music itself a kind of historical armor. That musical legacy, recognized globally through those huge signature hits, it ultimately proved more resilient in the narrative than the personal setbacks.
So it's like their artistic dominance allowed them to maybe not transcend, but at least compartmentalize the surrounding drama in the eyes of many, making that resilience itself a defining feature of modern celebrity culture.
It's definitely a complex and I think defining feature, yeah.
Yeah.
And it really showcases how, in this high-stakes world of global pop culture, sometimes that sheer force of innovation and foundational excellence can, in the long run, potentially outweigh individual conduct when people are writing the historical narrative. It's a constant tension. Okay, so now let's try and pull all these different threads together. For you, the listener, this is really about the long-term significance. So what? Why does all this history, this fandom, this controversy, why does it still matter today in the current landscape of global music? Hashtag 3.1, the globalization groundwork.
Well, the most unavoidable takeaway, the one that just screams from the source material, is that Big Bang laid absolutely essential, non-negotiable groundwork for the K-pop acts that came after them and achieved massive international success. Their global impact wasn't just a side note, it was fundamental.
We really need to unpack what that groundwork or infrastructure actually means. It wasn't just about having fans overseas. When Big Bang so successfully fused that sophisticated hip-hop-driven sound with high-quality K-pop production, they essentially achieved proof of concept in crucial Western markets.
Proof of concept, meaning they showed it could be done.
Exactly. They proved to Western audiences, to Western critics, and maybe most importantly to Western music promoters, labels, and media, that Korean idol groups weren't just a novelty act. They proved these groups could sell out international venues, sustain incredibly devoted fan bases outside of Asia, and produce music that resonated globally on its own artistic merit.
What specifically did Big Bang unlock, maybe, that earlier K-pop pioneers hadn't quite managed on the same scale?
I think it was normalizing the scale of it all.
Sure.
Earlier groups definitely paved the way, opened some doors, absolutely. But Big Bang demonstrated that K-pop could command these huge, dedicated global fan bases at scale, arena tours, massive album sales internationally.
Yeah.
Their success, in a way, de-risked the investment for the acts that followed. When a group like, say, BTS began making their major international push a few years later, the pathways were clearer. The distribution channels were more open, the media was more receptive, and that crucial proof of concept that sustained touring success in arenas and even stadiums was possible for a Korean group had already been partly established by Big Bang's earlier breakthroughs.
And this feels like the real aha moment for anyone trying to understand K-pop's journey. The sources explicitly draw that line, highlighting the direct implication. They set the stage for global acts like BTS. It drives home that current K-pop dominance didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was built on something.
Precisely. You can almost view the story of K-pop's globalization like a relay race. The first generation started it, carried the baton, Big Bang grabbed it, and through their pioneering sound, their visual artistry, their global ambition, they pushed the genre much further into the global mainstream consciousness. They essentially demonstrated the blueprint: how to craft a sound with global appeal, how to build a compelling global image, and how to cultivate a fiercely engaged global fandom. They created that opportunity, that infrastructure, and passed it on to the next generation, which includes, yes, world-dominating acts like BTS, and even their own YG label mates who followed, like Blackpink, hashtag 3.2, defining modern idol culture.
We touched on this earlier, their recognition for fashion artistry and influence on idol culture. How does that early disruption connect directly to the K-pop industry standards we see all around us today?
It's because their approach, fundamentally, I think permanently, broadened the very definition of what a K-pop idol could be, what they could do, what they could look like. Before Big Bang really hit their stride, the industry often, not always, but often, expected a higher degree of visual and stylistic conformity. Blend in, follow the concept.
Right.
Big Bang essentially gave subsequent generations of groups permission. Permission to be highly individualized. Permission to be edgy, even controversial in their concepts. Permission to be deeply influential voices in the worlds of high fashion and streetwear.
You can really see that today.
Absolutely. It's manifest everywhere in the current K-pop landscape. You have groups where each member is treated almost as an individual fashion icon with separate luxury brand endorsements. You have groups where creative control, a heavy involvement in songwriting and production is now almost expected, or at least highly valued, rather than being a rare exception. Big Bang's success proved that the label idol didn't have to mean manufactured. It didn't have to mean limited in artistic scope.
So when we look at the scene now, artists experimenting freely with genres like trap or Latin music, members becoming global ambassadors for fashion houses, creative input being celebrated, we're essentially seeing the direct, measurable results of Big Bang's initial boundary pushing. The risks they took paid off for everyone who came after.
I think that's a very fair assessment. Their legacy is both the permission slip and the standard they set. They established that benchmark for artistically ambitious, fashion-forward, creatively engaged idol culture. By successfully blending high art concepts, gritty hip-hop authenticity, and mainstream pop appeal, they just ensured that the musical and aesthetic toolkit available to all subsequent K-pop groups was exponentially wider, richer, and more diverse than the one they themselves inherited. Hashtag tag 3.3, the center of history.
Okay, so
I think it's the convergence of all those foundational elements we've discussed. You really can't separate them. First, you have their absolutely critical role in that early phase of global expansion, taking K-pop from being mostly a regional phenomenon to being a genuine global contender. That's undeniable history.
okay, number one, globalization pioneers.
Second, their almost unique ability, certainly for a group of their stature, to survive significant internal and external controversies. A survival that seems predicated almost entirely on their perceived dominance and historical importance of their artistic output itself. The art shielded them, in a way.
Number two, resilience through artistry.
And third, the sustained, incredibly powerful loyalty of that VIP fandom, a fan base that simply refuses to let the artistic flame die out, constantly keeping the legacy alive and relevant in the digital space.
Number three, enduring fan power. That trifecta.
That trifecta ensures they're not just remembered as a famous boy band. They function as the historical reference point, the benchmark against which the success, the style, the evolution of pretty much every subsequent K-pop generation gets measured, consciously or unconsciously.
Right. They set the terms of comparison.
Exactly. And so the ultimate takeaway here, the key lesson for you, the listener, that really comes through from the sources is this. BIGBANG's enduring relevance is powerful proof. Proof that fundamental musical innovation, being genuinely unique, bending genres, being relentlessly excellent in your craft, combined with those sustained, deep-seated emotional bonds with your fan base. Those are the two most potent factors for achieving long-term cultural significance, even when a group isn't actively releasing new music together anymore. That kind of resilience, powered primarily by the strength of the art itself. That's pretty much the definition of a true cultural landmark. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, that was a really comprehensive look at the kings of K-pop and their just undeniable global footprint. So just quickly recap the absolute essentials for you. Big Bang formed back in 2006. They pioneered that sophisticated hip-hop blend that became so foundational for K-pop's global rise, and they demonstrated a level of creative control and artistic individuality that was pretty groundbreaking for an idol group of their time.
Yeah, and their legacy is constantly being refueled, kept alive by the incredible loyalty of their VIP fandom. They were true globalization pioneers who really did set the stage, paving the way for the massive international success of groups that followed them. It reminds us that K-pop's current global dominance has deep, innovative, and sometimes complex roots.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for this exploration of the sources surrounding Big Bang's massive cultural impact. It really does make you think, doesn't it, about that relationship between celebrity, controversy, and artistic longevity, and how sometimes critical thinking means trying to assess the historical impact of the art, maybe separately from the personal events swirling around the artist. It's a tension we see again and again in modern culture.
It certainly is, and it's a good question to reflect on that idea of separation or connection as you go about your week.
Definitely food for thought. Now, next time, we're going to shift gears completely and unpack a totally different trending topic. We'll be exploring the recent surge in popularity and some of the underlying discussions around the body tea trend.
Until then, keep questioning.
And keep unpacking.